Hello friends, so today's video is going to be a list of some cons of the phenomenal game Elden Ring. So this is a follow-up video to one where I was basically just gushing about how fantastic Elden Ring is. Today I'm going to be kind of complaining a little bit. All of these complaints are really small and pale in comparison to the pros, but there are certain aspects of the game that are a little frustrating, and I know that a lot of us can probably relate. So I'm going to start with one that I welcome disagreeing opinions. I might be pretty alone in this, but I'm very curious what a lot of you feel about this topic, and also if you've played other From Software games and you're very familiar with the style of the bosses, you especially, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. But for me personally, I thought that a lot of the boss fights lacked finesse. So I'd been told over and over and over again, because I am new to From Software games, that the boss fights, they're so intricate and you have to sit and you have to study. And the way to defeat them is to figure out their patterns and to figure out their moves. But it's not as simple like there's a couple combos here and then once you know that, you're good. They have so many different patterns and so many different ways that you need to, here you dodge toward them and here you dodge and here you run and here you block. And there's so many different things that make it how you have to defeat them. And when you do, you just feel like, I mean, I majored in music, so apologies, but it's almost like when you get a really perfect run on your instrument and you're just like, oh yeah, I got it. And it's muscle memory. And I did not feel like that was the case with Elden Ring. And I'd heard that so many times, and a little bit I'm like, what are you all talking about? Because in a lot of ways, it came across more like these boss fights are just huge and have enormous reach. And I'm tiny and I take forever to drink one of my flasks. That's what it felt like. It didn't help that around the same time that I was playing Elden Ring, I was playing a very different game, but one that I think does do the you have to learn their moves very well, and that would be Metroid Dread. And Metroid Dread, I did truly feel like once I got something down that I was really proud of myself. I felt like, yeah, that's right. And there's a couple bosses that I was like, that one's not as good, but with the comparison to Elden Ring, it just always made me feel like I was going up against a Goliath and I was an ant. And there's this video of a raccoon rolling around and it says POV, you're a boss fight in Elden Ring. And it's just the best, most accurate way to represent what it feels like when you aren't a mage, I will add, because I think that it's a different style if you are a mage. Although there's your own separate cons to your being a mage. Still, I just wish that the bosses had a little more finesse. There's those people online that you find, of course, that defeat everything with a club and they're a wretch and you're like, okay, fine. You accomplished it. You made it look like it had finesse. But for most of the rest of us, I would say it wasn't as smooth as I would have liked. The two gargoyles, I hated that fight. The next point is going to be what I call the vertical factor. So in a lot of open world games now, you have some kind of element of traversing through the land via flight or some kind of travel that involves upward motion. Even something like Ghost of Tsushima, which is rooted in more, it's not perfectly realistic, of course, but it's more rooted in reality. Even that, you have the grappling hook. And in this game, any kind of upward motion, not great. And there are some areas that you pretty much have to get through by jumping to somewhere, and it's the clunkiest thing, and the amount of times that you die trying to jump somewhere, and that is tedious to me. That's not fun. That's not, oh, I gotta get really good at this. That's just goofy. It's just goofy, and it was frustrating, and I'm like, I'm not asking for a game to have parkour where this character is running across walls or anything like that. I just want it to be a little smoother. Just a little bit. And then beyond that, I do think it would be really cool if once you reached a certain point in the game, you did have that glide element, or you did have that ability to kind of go across distances utilizing the sky, or utilizing, if you're from a higher up position, you can go down. There is the air currents with the horse, but for me, that's not quite exactly what I'm referring to. And I understand that you wouldn't want to have that ability early on. It might be something you get in late game, but how cool would it be? Because there's certain areas on the map that you look out and you can see another area of the map, and there's statues. There's one in this mine area that is just the best lookout. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if anybody else feels like this. I love in games that do have this vertical component to just climb up really high or get to a really high position and then just jump off and glide to wherever I'm going. I don't know what it is, but it's so satisfying, and you can't do that in Elden Ring, which isn't that big of a deal. I more so get frustrated with the bad jumping of the character, but I just think it would be so fun. And I get that in multiplayer you wouldn't want that option, but you can just take it away when you go to play with someone else. So yeah, I wish there was that, because so many open world games have that to them now, and I think that would, if they do make another open world game, I think it would be really cool to see how they potentially would incorporate something like that. The next point would just be how tedious certain things can be. I'm not even referring to having to fight bosses multiple times. I understand that's kind of part of the thing with these sorts of games, so not that, but there's just little things that are kind of clunky sometimes. So for example, why is sprinting, at least on PlayStation, why isn't it just the analog stick L3 like every other game nowadays? And that's kind of frustrating. I get it's just a different control, but it does make it kind of weird. And the amount of times, because it's just, maybe it's my own fault. It is my own fault. I recognize that. But the amount of times that I'm fighting something and I'm on the horse and you just apply a little bit too much pressure on the analog stick, and then suddenly like you're jumping off the horse and you're like, no, idiot, get back on. And you're trying to get back on the horse, and then you're trying to sprint away and you get smashed by the fire giant or whatever giant thing you're fighting. And oh my gosh, is that so frustrating? And then because I get really angry when I'm playing, then I just go off about like, this game, these stupid mechanics of the gameplay are garbage, and I just start getting really angry, and it's frustrating. I also will say that certain aspects of playing with other people are frustrating. So I have been playing it again with my husband, which has been so much fun, but I do get a little irritated that once you beat any kind of enemy, even if it's not a major boss fight, just like a minor boss, if you defeat any kind of boss, it kicks you out. And I'm like, can you just let me stay, please? Because I'm gonna come right back as soon as he gets to an area where now it lets me be brought into his world. I don't like that. I wish they would fix that. I can kind of understand if you're not playing with a password, so then maybe you're playing online and the goal is to only help somebody with a boss fight. But I wish there was a way that you could just keep going and maybe give the person, the host, give them the option of kicking people out after a boss or keeping them around. That would be very nice. Leveling up is another thing that I think is unnecessarily tedious in this game. I will say a very, very specific aspect of leveling up that I always found really annoying is the individual that you go to, generally, to have your items become better. Why is he not the same person that you give the ball bearings to that you can then buy smithing stones from? I spent way too much time running from him to the Twin Husk ladies and then running back to him and then being like, gosh darn it, I forgot I needed this too. And then you run back to them and then you come back. And it is so annoying. Just make it the same person or put them in the same room at the very least. It's little things like that. And they are little things. It's little things like that that I'm like, was it fun for the game developers to imagine us running back and forth? Also, I do not like that when you go to buy armor from someone that it doesn't just have listed right next to it, here's your current stats, and here's the stats of this new thing, and here's what would be better, and here's what wouldn't be as good. Like most games. Usually I'll just take a picture. I mean, at this point I don't, because at this point I've got the armor I want. But early on, I would take a picture, and then I would go to mine, and then I would compare it, and then I'd have to determine it that way. And that just, it seems like the simplest of things. Just have it next to it. Or just have the numbers be red for the things that are going down and green for the things that are going up, or something like that. Easy. I don't know why that's not how it is. The next point would be the rather frequent changes to the game. So there's a lot of instances where you find out, oh, this is a really cool armor set, or this is a really cool Ashes of War to attach to this thing, and you have this style that you're going to aim for, and so you aim for that, and then they update it and they weaken it, and you're like, gosh darn it, and you get really frustrated because you're like, that's what I was going for. I get maybe making something not quite as strong, but regardless, what ends up happening is that the gaming experience for everyone changes depending at what point you play the game, which makes one of my favorite aspects of the game is the community and the discussion and this feeling of all of us are going through this together. it kind of a little bit takes away from that, because I like that there are certain fights that are just so unbelievably difficult and everybody's scrambling trying to figure out how can we beat this thing, and then there's this one person that's like, hey, I found out that if you do this, this works, and then a bunch of people are like, I'm gonna try that. And I just really like that sense of community and trying to get through things together. And I hate when, you know, you have that person that figures the thing out and you have all these people that come together and they're like, yay, it worked, and then they're like, oh, we better fix that, and then they change it, and then the next batch of people is like, I can't do it, and then you realize they nerfed it. That's it for some minor frustrations, but frustrations nonetheless with Elden Ring. I'm very interested to know what are some things that aggravated you as you played through the game. Let me know your thoughts overall. How much do you love Elden Ring? How does it compare to the other From Software games? But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.